Ancient Egyptians didn't understand the cosmic order as a natural, permanent state of things, but as something very fragile, over which there was a constant struggle between Ra, other defenders of creation, and the servants of chaos, such as the serpent Apep, who in Egyptian religion personified disorder and darkness. He was the opponent of Maat, the cosmic order. Nun, the primordial chaos, is a dangerous being that can engulf the world of people and all of creation at any moment. So the cosmos, an ordered whole, is constantly teetering on the edge. Who or what was Nun? How did the ancient Egyptians understand the nature of the cosmos? What did they see staring at the night sky? Hello everyone, my name's Irena. Welcome to my channel Ancient Sides Girl. I invite you to a podcast about the history of ancient Egypt. Today I would like to tell you more about myths and beliefs related to what is above the earth. We will hear about the sky, stars, the constellations, planets, as well as learn more about different versions of the ancient Egyptian creation myth. The American Egyptologist James Peter Allen aptly summarized the nature of Egyptian cosmology. The Egyptians lived in a universe composed not of things but of beings. Each element is not merely a physical component but a distinct individual with a unique personality and will. The sky is not an inanimated vault, but a goddess who conceives the sun each night and gives birth to him in the morning. The atmosphere that separates sky from earth is not an empty void, but a god. The Duat is not merely a mysterious region through which the sun passes at night, but the god Osiris. Even the vast and lifeless outer waters have an identity as the god Nun. The vault of the sky, represented by the body of the goddess Nut, separates the earth, the human world, from what lay outside. Dark, cold, empty, infinite, watery expanse, called Nun. The primeval cosmic ocean, the abyss from which at the beginning time, Sep Tepi, the world emerged. Creation took place. The sky, Nut, separated the earth with its atmosphere from the cosmic ocean, protecting humanity and the world from flooding. The cosmos beyond the visible sky is described in the Book of Nut, a collection of ancient religious astronomical texts, as follows. What is above this sky is in complete darkness. Its limits are not known. Fixed are these in the Nun, in inertness. There is no light there. As for any place free of sky and free of earth, it is the entire Duat. The realm of the dead, Duat, represented in hieroglyphs as a star in a circle, is an alternative, multidimensional spiritual world with its own geography, fields, rivers, islands, lakes of fire, iron walls. The entrance to this other dimension was somewhere in the western sky. Ra, during nocturnal journey, sails there on his back through the mouth of the goddess Nut every evening, always at sunset. The boundaries of the outer cosmos of Nun in the Book of Nut were also called Kebehu, which was symbolized by the hieroglyph of tall water jug with liquid pouring from it. Generally today this word translates to cool waters. Both the cosmos and the celestial vault were imagined as gigantic bodies of water. This is how they were described already in the pyramid texts. Interestingly, the term Kebehu was also used to refer to lands foreign to the Egyptians, kingdoms of barbarians, you could say foreigners who were considered enemies of the cosmic harmony of Ma'at, and therefore regarded as servants of Nun, chaos. Kebehu therefore meant a place beyond these geographical and metaphorical boundaries. Nun is referred to as unknown space, as opposed to Duat, the land of the dead, whose descriptions, even geographical ones, can be found in a later New Kingdom texts, but that's a topic for another podcast. Like the Duat, we also know descriptions of the lower heaven, the space of gods and stars, which can be seen with the naked eye from the earth. The dark, dead infinity is a primordial, eternal, and irreversible environment that gods and creation can never change. Creation can only exist beside and against it. None, on the other hand, can consume the created world at any moment. Nun rarely appears in the pyramid texts. The pyramid of Pepi I, third king of the 6th dynasty from the 23rd century BC, is located in southern Saqqara. It contains the most extensive text of any Old Kingdom source known to us. In the spells that commend his soul to the gods, we read, "I was born in Nun, before the sky existed, before the earth existed, before that which was to be made form existed, before turmoil existed, before that fear which arose on account of the eye of Horus existed." So how did the entire universe known to the ancient Egyptians come into being? The earliest of all creation myths is the one of the god Atum, developed by the priests of Ra in Heliopolis, the city of the sun, by the Egyptians called Yano, hence the myth is also called the Heliopolitan cosmogony. This myth describes the genealogy of the Ennead. It's obviously another Greek word. The Egyptians called it Pesachjet. It was a group of 9 gods, Atum, Shu and Tefnut, Geb and Nut, who conceived Osiris, Isis, Seth and Nephthys. In the beginning there was only formlessness. Nothing existed but the aforementioned chaos of Nun, the endless pitch-black waters. Regardless of the different traditions of creation myths, they all agree on one thing. Before the beginning of things, there was a fluid, dark abyss, endless, without boundaries or directions. Then, out of the chaos emerged a small pyramid-shaped mound of mud, Benben. At the same time, from the dark waters of Nun emerged the self-generated Atum, the first god whose name meant both all and nothing. Atum stood atop Benben like the sun coming up over the horizon and released the seed of life from within himself. In this way, 2 of his children were born, Shu, the god of air and wind, and Tefnut, the deity of moisture and rain. In the texts recorded in Pepi II's pyramid, the 5th pharaoh of the 6th dynasty, we read, "Atum, beetle, you became high as the hill, you rose as the Benben in the Benben enclosure in Heliopolis. You sneezed Shu and spat Tefnut. You put your arms around them as Ka arms, so that your Ka might be in them." Shu and Tefnut gave birth to 2 children of their own, Geb, the god of earth, and Nut, the sky goddess. They in turn gave birth to Osiris, Isis, Seth, and Nephthys. Shu, however, disapproved of the relationship between Geb and Nut. He decided to separate them by lifting Nut high above Geb, holding her so that Geb could not reach her. The couple was separated and air was between them. Geb then cried so much that seas and oceans were formed from his tears. Depending on the sources, Atum was titled as the one who created what exists, Lord of all things, or Lord of life. His name is a form of the word Tum, which means to end or not to be. This may mean that the god completed creation without being part of a created order. Usually depicted in anthropomorphic form as a pharaoh, but sometimes as a serpent or a lion. Atum, who emerged from nothingness, standing on the hill of Bamban and making the first act of creation, gave rise to Sopdet, literally the first time, the beginning of time. Though Atum cannot interfere with Nun, chaos pervades creation already during the first time. One of the gods of the Ennead, Seth, disrupts the original order, betrays and kills his brother, and causes a war between the gods, of course according to Osirian mythology. This is the end of Sopdet's golden age of gods. The disturbance of the natural order was to be repaired by the pious people of Egypt, above all the righteous pharaohs, incarnations of the divine Horus, who as the 10th joined the Ennead to restore the golden era of gods on earth. It is the Ennead that proclaims Horus king of Egypt, even before defeating Seth in the struggle for the throne of Osiris. The dead pharaohs, according to the pyramid texts, were supposed to return to their father Atum. They became witnesses of the first time, moved around Nun, and temporarily returned to the state before the existence of nature. For an important, widely accepted creation myth, it obviously had to do with the afterlife. In the tradition of Hermopolis, Khemenu as the Egyptians called this city, between the primordial chaos and the gods of the Ennead, we find the group of 8 primordial deities, the Ogdoad. The Ogdoad consisted of 4 male-female pairs. These gods corresponded to particular attributes of chaos. Each of the Ogdoad's pairs represented common characteristics. Female names ended in et. Nun and Nunet, watery space, the lack of solidity. Hech and Hehet, endless time, the lack of time. Kek and Keket, darkness, the lack of light. Tenem and Tenemet, to wander, lack of direction. In later versions, the last pair will be replaced by Amun and Amunet, the hidden, the lack of sight. After taking part in the creation of the cosmos, the gods of Ogdoad died and descended into the underworld. In the pyramid texts we read, "You have your bread loaf, O Nun and Nunet, you pair of the gods who joined the gods with their shadow. You have your bread loaf, O Amun and Amunet, you pair of the gods who joined the gods with their shadow. You have your bread loaf, O Atum and double lion, who yourselves created your 2 gods and their bodies, that is Shu and Tefnut, who made the gods, who begot the gods and established the gods." The latest of these cosmogonies, the Memphis creation myth, exalts Ptah, the city's patron, as the chief creative force and the greatest of the gods, the Great One of pre-creation. He had come into being before the Ennead. He was identified with the first hill of dry land, Banban. He was to create Atum and the first gods by the great word, pronouncing their names, whereas Atum in the Heliopolitan version rather acted than expressed. The entire rest of creation came into existence at once by means of Heka, magic, divine energy. After that, the creation proceeded in the same way as in the Heliopolis version. In all versions of the creation myth, we observe a transition from the unmanifested unawareness of oneself and the barren waters of Nun to the self-creation of the Maker, a conscious and life-giving being. The Book of Nut, originally called Fundamentals of the Chorus of Stars, is a complex cosmographical composition of ancient astronomical texts describing both the topography of the night sky and the movements of the stars, sun, moon, and planets, all framed in a religious context. The oldest depiction of the Book of Nut was found on the walls and ceiling of Osirian in Abydos. The reliefs date back to the 13th century BC, the time of Seti I. Researchers agree, however, that the astronomical data points to the Middle Kingdom, and according to some even to the Old Kingdom, which would make it one of the oldest Egyptian books. As Carl Gustav Jung wrote in his Reflections on Ancient Religions, female heavenly deities like Nut are symbols of hidden transformation, pertaining to the junction of a dream world to the real world of life. Of course, the central element of the Book of Nut is the gigantic image of the goddess Nut, dominating the ceilings of various monuments, an extremely characteristic and unusual way of showing the celestial vault. Although her image is literal and suggestive, it certainly stimulates the imagination. Her image symbolizes heaven as a direct manifestation of divinity, sacredness, and eternity. Depicted as a naked woman, she arches her body across the sky in a protective posture over the earth. Cosmic activities take place in her celestial body. Its peculiar appearance leads many researchers to the hypothesis that the Egyptians interpreted the Milky Way's luminous star belt in the night sky as her body. The Milky Way hypothesis was put forward by the American astronomer Ronald Wells, according to whom the Egyptians saw in the constellation Gemini her head and her birth canal in Cygnus, where cosmic dust clouds split the Milky Way into two legs. In Wells' view, in Egyptian prehistory more than 6,000 years ago, the sun would have set just before Gemini, Nut's head, at the spring equinox, as if swallowed by the goddess. Exactly 9 months later, at the winter solstice, the sun would have risen very close to Cygnus, Nut's birth canal. Indeed, the Milky Way bears a stunning resemblance to the iconography of the goddess with her hands and feet touching the horizon. If myths explain the phenomena in the night sky observed by the prehistoric Egyptians, it's therefore possible that originally Nut wasn't perceived as the whole of the celestial vault, but only a part of it, the Milky Way. Invaluable information about Nut and her pivotal role in saving the soul of the pharaohs is provided by the pyramid texts of Pepi I. Here are the spells to ensure that Pepi, who became Osiris after death, would reach Nut. So you should go forth to where your mother is, Nut, and she will take hold of your arm and give you the way to the Yakhet, to the place where the sun is. The sky's door has been opened to you. The cool water's door has been made to pull open to you, and you will find the sun standing, waiting for you. He will take hold of your arm, lead you into the sky's dual shrines, and put you on Osiris' throne. After that, Pepi invokes the goddess. Nut, spread yourself over your son, Osiris Pepi, and conceal him from Seth. Join him, Nut, who comes to you, and conceal your son as he who comes to you. You should join this great one. Nut, fall over your son, Osiris Pepi. Join him, great Seth, this eldest of your children. Nut is amazingly characterized by her divine spouse and brother at the same time, Geb, the god of the earth, who commends the soul of the deceased pharaoh to Nut. Nut, as you became effective and took control in your mother Tefnut's belly before you were born, may you join Pepi, and he will not die. Your heart took control as you moved in your mother's belly in your identity of Nut. You are the daughter who took control in her, having appeared as a bee. May you occupy this Pepi inside you, and he will not die. A great thing has happened in the sky, for you have taken control, become powerful, and filled every place with your beauty. The entire land is under you, for you have acquired it. You have encircled the land and everything within your arms, and have placed this Pepi as an imperishable star that is in you. Her mother, over whom according to Geb she had to take control, is of course Tefnut herself, lion-headed goddess of moisture and rain. Her consort and brother Shu represents the Earth's atmosphere. Later on, Pepi continues his recitations. Nut, the two eyes emerged in your head when you acquired Horus and his grade of magic as well, when you acquired Seth and his grade of magic as well. Nut, as you have allotted the one you have given birth, in your identity of her, in the sedan chair of Heliopolis, may you allot this Pepi to life, that he may not perish. Nut, you have appeared as a bee, for you control the gods and their castes as well, and their inheritance as well, and their nourishment as well, and all their things as well. Nut, when you make him revive, he will live. Nut, as you live, Pepi lives. The sky goddess replies to the pharaoh, I am Nut. Elevate this Osiris Merira to me. Give him to me that I may collect him. O Father Osiris Pepi, elevate yourself to me. Osiris Merira, bring yourself toward me. The name Merira is the throne name of Pepi I. Finally, Nut opens the sky's door for Pepi. The eastern door of the sky, the one of fixed of castes, has been opened to him, and Nut shall give her arms toward him. She of long horn and dangling breast will suckle this Merira and not wean him. When she has taken him to the sky, she will not drop him to the earth, but will make this Pepi's abode in the four of the dual shrines. The pyramid texts, Egypt's oldest religious texts, give us, as you can see, invaluable insight into Egyptian cosmology in its most ancient primeval form, as certainly some of these texts date back to the religious traditions of the pre-dynastic period. Important for pyramid texts is not only the content but also their location. Their arrangement within the pyramids of the 5th and 6th dynasties corresponds to the movement of the pharaoh's soul, going from the deepest parts of the burial chamber, Duat, land of the dead in the west, through the antechamber, the eastern horizon of Akhet, to the outside of the pyramid, through the long northern tunnel, going to the northern circumpolar stars, called imperishable, to reach the field of offering. The Duat represented by the burial chamber is not part of Nun or sky. It is a place beyond human experience. The field of reeds is the realm of the deceased, deities, and the mystery of Osiris. Akhet is the place where the deceased becomes an effective spirit, Ak. Finally, spiritualization takes place in the northern tunnels of the imperishable sky. The Ak can leave the tomb and ascend to the northern stars. Akhet is the horizon, the mysterious interstitial zone reached and crossed by boat. As we know, the heavens are surrounded by boundless waters. Both gods and the dead can only move on them on cosmic boats. This view seems to have prevailed among the Egyptians as far back as the early dynastic period, when rulers were buried with boats and even their entire fleet. An example are burials from the times of the first dynasty in Abydos. Physical bark shrines belonging to the gods were worshipped throughout Egypt, especially the solar bark of Ra, Mandjet, and Osiris bark at Abydos, Neshmet. The Egyptians understood the solar circuit as a circumnavigation of the world by boat. They saw the world as a finite space bounded by land and sky, personified by Tefnut. This world was believed to exist in the infinite ocean of Nun. The world from flooding was protected by Nut with her body and her father Shu representing the atmosphere of the earth who held her. The sky was seen as the surface of the cosmic ocean, where it met the atmosphere. So a trip across the sky required a boat. On the ceiling of Osirian in Abydos we find an enigmatic description of the aforementioned part of the cosmos, the Kebehu, the firmament of the gods, the place from which the birds come. These are on her, Nut's, northwestern side as far as her northeastern side, which is open onto the Duat, which is on her northern side. Her rear part is in the east, her head in the west. Particularly intriguing in this fragment of the Book of Nut seems to be the information about birds that were supposed to come from Kebehu. Interestingly, a similar mention of migratory birds coming to Egypt from the north was found in a text from the Sun Temple at Abu Ghurab from the Old Kingdom. During the earliest times, the Egyptians weren't yet aware of the existence of other lands north of their country, beyond the Mediterranean Sea. In fact, They imagined that the migratory birds came from outer space, from the area where the entrance to the Duat, the land of the dead, was supposed to be. Migrating birds, which like stars disappeared over the horizon to reappear next year, were also associated with Decans, stars whose observation was used to measure time. Migratory birds, like the gods of the stars, could freely move between different dimensions, travel through the cosmos. The Decans are 36 groups of small star constellations. Egyptian astronomers used decans to conveniently divide the 360-degree ecliptic into 36 parts of 10 degrees each for chronological purposes. This star clock marked the decanal hours of the night, with the rising of each decan on the horizon. The Egyptians measured time this way for sure as early as the first intermediate period, around 2100 BC. So 36 decans are measures of time. Their rising and setting marked the so-called hours, groups of 10 days, which made up the Egyptian year, 360 days. The decans were symbolized by star gods. The god's name represents a group of stars. 3 such decans correspond to one of the Western zodiac. So, for example, Aries corresponds to Khent-Khero, Ket, and Sasaket, and Gemini are the deities of Remen-Khersach, Asach, and Sach. The deities were shown with their individual characteristics and attributes, obviously sailing on barks through the Kebehu, firmament of the gods, the boundary part of the chaotic waters of Nun, the outer cosmos, what is beyond Nut. This was the highest point an ancient Egyptian could see from earth. In the Book of Nut we read, "To the boundaries of the sky, on her outer side they sail at night, when they shine forth and are seen. During the day they sail inside her, when they do not shine forth and they are not seen. In the following of this God they enter, and in his following they go forth." The duat into which the star gods enter during the day to regenerate is described as the cosmic womb of the mother Nut, which they leave at night to reappear on the horizon and sail with new strength on their boats through the endless cosmic waters of Nun. So the Book of Nut also describes Duat, the entrance to which is somewhere in the northernmost reaches of the cosmos, where the sun Ra makes a nightly journey into the darkness to be reborn in the morning, and the stars take refuge in it during the day, to in the evening be born again from the cosmic body of Nut. Duat here is inseparable from the nature of the Heavenly Mother, a great place of regeneration and eternal life, not only of the souls of dead people, but also of gods and the entire cosmos. Among the spells of the resurrection ritual of Pepi II, we read, "The waters in Nun have been cut at the sound of the scream of Nut, the mother of Pepi Neferkare, when she gave birth to him and tied the headband on Pepi Neferkare, as your greatest cause of trembling, gods, the one at whom you trembled, gods, when Isis spoke against Nun." Interestingly, not only the deceased pharaohs but also Nun, the primeval ocean, could be identified with Osiris, whose cult, as we know, expanded from the end of the Old Kingdom, and Osiris himself was gradually becoming an aspect of other ancient deities. The Book of Nut informs us that the sun is purified in the arms of Father Osiris before being reborn. Osiris, of course, symbolizes the regenerative forces needed by the sun to rise in the morning. From the sacred books we also learn that Osiris not only dwells in the Duat, but also in the firmament of the gods, the furthest northern edge of the cosmos. According to the prevailing theology of the New Kingdom, Osiris wasn't only the ruler of the Duat, the traveling sun as the ram-headed Osiris-Ra, but also an aspect of Nun himself, obviously the one related to the act of creation. It is important to remember that nothing is constant in Egyptian religion. The gods take on multidimensional features. Their roles change smoothly over the centuries, only the moral principles remain unchanged. Even the chaos, the impersonal, hitherto hidden Nun in the sarcophagus texts of the Middle Kingdom appears as a deity, although no cult or temple was dedicated to him. It remained taboo for the Egyptians. Among the stars above the Egyptian sky, Sirius shone brightest. It was of great importance to the ancients. His annual appearance before dawn on the summer solstice heralded the coming rise of the Nile. Time for Egyptians was cyclic. The Egyptian year was inseparable from the flooding of the Nile. It was divided into 3 seasons: Akhet, inundation; Peret, growth; and Shemu, harvest. This cycle was so consistent that it was timed to start using the heliacal rising of Sirius, the key event used to set the calendar. Sirius is the savior star, obviously considered to be a divine emanation. The Egyptians called her Sopdet, the star goddess, better known of course by her Greek name Sothis, the goddess of fertility and flooding. She was the centerpiece of the Egyptian New Year celebration, Wep Renpet. She was depicted as a woman with a 5-pointed star on her head. Her name Sopdet means sharp one. The texts in Pepi's pyramid quite enigmatically describe her. Sothis has come forth, clad in her tailed kilt and her sharp garment, that she might sense the sharp ones and those who are of them. The term sharp ones refers to the stars. Her consort was Sah, the god of the Orion constellation near Sirius. He was called the father of the gods. In Unas pyramid we read, Unas is the god who is senior to the senior ones, for thousands serve him and hundreds present offerings to him, for he has been given title as the greatest controlling power by Orion, the god's father. Over time, Sah was syncretized with Osiris and his wife with Isis. Their child was the god Sodu or Horus Sodu, called the Lord of the East. He protected the Egyptian frontier outposts. He was worshipped in the Sinai settlements. In Ptolemaic Egypt, Sirius was the star of Isis, then the most popular goddess. Sirius was called the divine Sephat, the soul of Isis. Despite the role of Sirius as the herald of the flooding of the Nile, her astral influence appears in the Old and Middle Kingdom almost always in a funerary context. No wonder that in later centuries the Greeks and Romans identified the name of Sothis with Anubis. They themselves attributed Sirius to the mythical dog, Cerberus. Star motifs from the Old and Middle Kingdoms are present in the tombs of the 19th and 20th dynasties. As we know, the Ramesside period was a response to the prior Amun-Ra heresy and a return to the roots of Egyptian religiosity. During exploration of these tombs, I was particularly impressed by the astronomical vaulted ceiling in the tomb of Seti I, KV 17, in the Valley of the Kings. The decoration of the ceiling in Seti's burial chamber is a perfectly preserved depiction of the northern constellations and their gods called the Ik-Menusek, the ones not knowing destruction. The circumpolar stars were seen as indestructible or the imperishable because, to the observer, they never leave the celestial vault all nights of the year. On the ceiling we also see Sothis and Osiris Orion on boats, as well as decans and processions of gods flanked by many stars. The most visible large image of the hippopotamus goddess, Taweret, with a crocodile on her back, is supposed to symbolize the constellations of Ursa Major and Draco. Astral Taweret appears next to the foreleg of a bull, Big Dipper, called by the Egyptians foreleg of Seth. Astronomical ceilings will become an obligatory element in the tombs of Seti's successors. A particularly characteristic motif of the decoration of Ramessidic tombs is the monumental image of Nut, who from then on not only protected the earth but also the royal tombs. In one of my favorite tombs, Ramesses VI, KV 9, the burial chamber is decorated with a 13-meter-long image of the sky goddess. Yellow figures, symbols and hieroglyphs on a dark blue background, often deviating from the canon. Bizarre and surreal depictions. It's inside these tombs that we can understand how differently from us ancient Egyptians perceived the night sky. To them, physics and the true nature of the stars and planets seemed unimportant. Rather, they thought about the spiritual, religious aspect of the phenomena they observed. The night sky was more of an arena for soul travel. Obsessed with eternal life, watching the firmament, they tried to follow the souls on their way to the Duat, and their conclusions were meticulously recorded in the sacred books. Their great achievements in the field of science and engineering also served this purpose. It was not so much curiosity about the nature of the universe as a deep spirituality that fueled the Egyptians. As described by Herodotus, they are religious excessively beyond all other men. The ancient Egyptians referred to the planets as living stars. 3 of the 5 planets visible to the naked eye were associated with Horus. Mars was called Horus of the horizon, Horus the Red. Jupiter was called Horus who illuminates the two lands, or Horus who bounds the two lands, while Saturn was simply called Horus or Bull of the Sky. The Egyptians called Mercury Sebeg. We don't know the meaning of this word. He was also associated with Seth, as Seth in the evening twilight. Venus was called the star which crosses and was depicted as a heron or a man with a falcon head, and sometimes as a man with double-headed falcon. Venus was also associated with Osiris. So we have Horus, Osiris and Seth. Heaven reflects the theological order of earth. If we add to this the sun, Ra, and the moon, Khonsu, it turns out that almost all celestial bodies are perceived as exclusively masculine entities, in contrast to other cultures. It was not until the Greco-Roman period that more scientific mathematical models were developed to calculate the positions of the planets. Although ancient Egyptian cosmology was abandoned after the Christianization of Egypt, some of its elements have survived to this day in astrology and various esoteric traditions. I hope you learned something new about the beliefs of ancient Egyptians today. Thank you for listening. Please let me know in the comments what you would like to hear about next time. Don't forget to like my video and subscribe to my channel. Goodbye and see you on the next one.